There's no magic word or phrase you can say to build trust with people. You build trust over time by doing what you say you're going to do and delivering value at the end of the day.
Welcome back to Talent Hunters, powered by MRI Network, where each week we talk with the world's top talent strategists and executive recruiters. If you want to build talented teams that drive your company to big goals and big growth, then this podcast is for you. And now, let's join the conversation with today's episode of Talent Hunters.
Folks, I'm with Jon Semingson, owner of Peak Demand in Sacramento, California. Welcome, Jon.
Hey, thanks, Vince. Good to reconnect.
It's been a long time. You've been in this business now 17 years.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah, it's 16 or 17. I've lost track, but you know how it is. It turns into dog years.
Yeah, I was thinking you were like 15 when you started with Carl.
I wasn't that young, but yeah, it feels like it's been a long time.
So let's start out by just you telling us a little bit about your background and what led you to where you are today in our search world.
Yeah, well, you know how it is. Nobody grows up saying, I want to be a recruiter when I grow up. So we all kind of fall into this one way or another, and I'm no exception. I think at the time, actually, Carl kind of did a little bit of a bait and switch on me, saying he had some great management opportunities in Sacramento, and it was still management recruiters of Sacramento. And so came in and interviewed a couple of times, and I knew I was going to be in sales in one way, shape, or form. And honestly, I felt like when I came in and interviewed and they said, hey, get on the phone, you're going to make some cold calls as part of the interview process. I was literally, I remember it very well. My hands were trembling as I was making some name gathering calls. Then I figured, hey, I'll try this out and see what happens. I know I want to be in sales and I got to figure out this cold call reluctance thing and push through it. So, we'll see what happens. And, 17 years later, still doing it.
Now, how long did you work as a recruiter for Carl?
So I started off as, project coordinator, recruiter, did that for about 9 months, give or take. And then the more senior recruiter I was working under left. And suddenly it was, hey, Jon, you're in charge of this energy desk. Go figure out how to make some placements with, at the time we were doing work in power marketing, both retail and power and natural gas, as well as some energy efficiency work. So we had to kind of take the ball and run with it with some of those projects.
And then Carl came to you and said, what?
Oh, gosh, I think it was, I'd have to go back and look. It's been a long time. I think it was around 2012 that Carl was starting to retire and was moving and, said, hey, listen, I got a couple more years that I want to keep my hands on the wheel. But, how would you feel about taking over the business? What do you want to do? And so we talked for a while about different options and what that might look like. But I think it was probably 6 or 7 years, if I'm not mistaken, before, from the time I was hired until, the time I took the keys.
So taking the keys.
Yeah.
What surprised you right off the bat in the first 90 days?
Oh, my goodness. I think I was probably woefully unprepared for the transition, to be honest. Being a great recruiter or a good recruiter and managing a couple of people, it's a very different skill set than running a whole business. And I think that I probably was underfunded, was a little bit too heavy in terms of headcount a few times. So, there was a few moments where it was a little touch and go and you're feeling your way through it and trying to get it going. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you and I had a couple of conversations you may not remember around personnel and when's the right time to let folks go and how do I know when someone's going to push through or when it's time to cut bait. And those were the things that I think I really struggled with. And actually they're still very, very difficult for me and for most business owners.
There is no outline for perfection in this business. It is trial and error. Yeah. And, the secret is don't ever quit. Just keep learning from your mistakes. And Jon, right now your office is ranked number 25 through September.
Really? I didn't know that.
25 in the world. You're ranked number 13 as managing producer.
Oh, really? I didn't know that
Sounds
either.
to me like you're getting a handle on things, my friend.
You know, you know that this business always has a way of humbling you. So yeah, actually, again, I didn't know either of those. I have not been looking at the rankings. That's really exciting. We've got a really good team over here that it takes time, as you know, to get the right people in place and get them trained. And we are definitely a quality over quantity type of an organization, and really take a lot of pride in knowing our market and learning what we're doing, and just continuing to learn every day, both about recruiting and the trends and the way things are shifting. But more than that, really trying to get everybody here to be experts in our space and renewables, which is a very technical industry. So, boy, that's just a testament, I'd say, to all the good work of everybody we've got over here, just grinding it out every day. That's awesome to hear.
Well, your humility is admirable, but it does start at the top and in the training and in the accountability and so forth. So great job. And I don't want to belabor this, but I want to just focus on this just a little bit longer. What advice would you give? Because there's a lot of people in your shoes, my shoes, that were AEs that are taking over for their offices. So what advice could you give, number one, the account executives that are going to do this? What kind of a little bit of advice could you give them?
Gosh, I think you have to really remember what your biggest strengths are and the areas that you really excel. And for some people, that's on the business development side. Some people, it's on the recruiting side and managing candidate relationships. But I think, especially starting out, it's really trying to figure out where's your lane, where you add the most value to the market and to your business. And then how can you bring in some other folks around you to support that, and that can accentuate some of the areas where maybe you're not strong. I think organizationally, when you look at like personal development in general, a lot of folks will say you should work on your weaknesses and find the gaps and work on them. I kind of believe the opposite. Play to your strengths, work on your strengths, and find other people that can come in and help fill the gaps maybe where you're weak. So figuring that out, I think, is huge. The thing that I really struggled with, and still struggle with to this day, is that delicate balance of knowing where to hold on and when to let go, and how to empower folks and let them figure things out. And it's that balance of the give and take, and trying to develop them and letting them fail without having it be catastrophic, so they can learn. And I think those are the things that at least for me, were really hard as we were, building the business and scaling.
So with that same mind frame, now that you've had a chance to experience the transition, what piece of advice would you give an owner that is having a Jon Semingson take over for him?
I don't know, because I haven't done that side of it. But I would think that the more you can have them involved in some of the non kind of desk level topics, understanding the P&L, understanding the burn rate of the office, just making, at least for me, having a broader understanding of that was critical. And, I'm not a financial wizard, but I'm decent. And even I was fairly, it took me a little bit, and there were some growing pains there for sure. So I think that stuff is incredibly important. I think it's also a matter of kind of focus at times. Once you move on from, hey, who's my client today? Who are my candidates I'm working with? How am I arranging these interviews and filling the jobs and doing the blocking and tackling? When you move away from that, you start looking at office infrastructure and CRMs and phone systems, and you're worried about all of the other things that have to go on to keep a business running. Again, making sure that you've got the people around you that can keep the momentum going for the business on a day-to-day basis, so that you're not dropping the ball as you're looking at all these other bigger picture topics. And the more work you can do, hopefully, if you're taking over an established business, whether it's recruiting or anything else in the world, some of that infrastructure is already in place. But even in a best case scenario, there's always hiccups in these transitions. There just is.
Enough said about the transition. So what are some unique challenges of recruiting in the solar renewable energy space compared to other industries?
We absolutely love our market. The renewable energy space, it's been a wild ride, and we call it the solar coaster because it tends to do this depending on which administration's in office and different incentives. And it's just it is a patchwork of different markets across the country. Where if you're placing folks in construction and healthcare, I know that there certainly can be economic cycles like everybody, but it doesn't necessarily change as regionally as it does for us in solar. We're dealing with an issue in California right now where the Public Utilities Commissions just changed some of the rules and how solar customers are compensated. And so the residential market in solar in California just dropped like 75% year over year. So we have some of these types of unique challenges where we have to kind of know what's going on in what markets. And if one area is getting a little softer, how do we make sure that we're diversified into some other areas? So there's always some of those challenges, which, again, really mirror what our customers are seeing and what's going on. So if we know what's happening for them, we know what's happening for us. But I think the other thing that's been somewhat unique over the last couple of years, this is just an emerging market. And there's been a ton of growth and a lot of activity. And of course, when companies are calling us, they're looking for people that have the experience, that have been there, done that, and can hit the ground running and really impact their business immediately. And there's not enough experienced talent to go around right now. And so there's a pretty fundamental skills gap out there of project engineers and project managers, construction professionals, and folks that really have done a lot of this work. And as it continues to expand over the next couple of years, it's only going to continue to be a major issue for our clients.
So, do you have any kind of a game plan to deal with that of the shortage of talent?
Certainly not a problem that we can solve on our own, but we are. In fact, I'm doing a roundtable on Friday with a consortium in the industry called Renewables Forward, where addressing some of these very challenges, not only the talent shortage, but particularly as you look at the renewables market, we tend to be very heavy white male, and trying to broaden out that the diversity of the market and bring in more minorities and female candidates. It's a team effort that's going to require a lot from everybody in the industry. So we absolutely try to make an effort in all of these areas, but it's a challenge. There's no two ways about it.
Now, are you working all across the country, or are you just regionalized?
No, we're national, but it tends to be hot spots. There's not a lot going on in Des Moines, right? So we do a lot in the West Coast. There's quite a bit at the Southeast and the Northeast, and certainly Texas and some of the middle of the country. It's national, but it ends up being heavily focused in pockets.
Boy, I can only imagine California's just got to be that's just got to be a cesspool with all the government input.
We certainly have a lot of government intervention in California. There's no doubt about it.
So what trends are you seeing right now in terms of hiring needs and like we covered, the talent availability? There's needs out there that you can't fill. What are you doing about that, though? I understand the having the conversations and stuff, but there is a tremendous shortage. And other companies, other industries are experiencing that same type of thing.
Yeah.
So I know I'm belaboring a little bit, but what are you doing on that talent availability to get where you can't find them?
It's a really important thing. And I think if you look demographically at the participation in the labor market and the number of open jobs we've got, the fact of the matter is we've had a lot of people retiring, and there are not an equivalent number of people entering the workforce in their 20s, and college rates are down. And anyway, this is going to be a really big problem for the foreseeable future. So for us, it's a matter of trying to educate our customers to some degree, right? Because, and I'm sure you guys see it internally as well, customers call us and they want perfect. They want that engineer who's had 70 years experience designing utility scale solar projects. And of course they want them for, $120,000 when the market's 145 to 150. And so, we really have to start having these conversations, and I would say challenging tactfully of, okay, yeah, we understand that this is what you really, really need and want, but this is what the market is. This is what the talent availability looks like. Where do we have the ability to flex? Can we either find somebody with a little less experience? Can we look at somebody who's been doing traditional power generation stuff and maybe doesn't have all of the solar experience? And the challenge becomes that sometimes in the companies we work with, which are frequently small to medium-sized development shops or other organizations that just don't have a really big infrastructure, they may not have the ability to train these folks and to bring people in from outside the markets. Some of the bigger players in our space have been doing an amazing job of this, but we do notice that the smaller to medium-sized companies really seem to have more challenges with it. So we have to talk with our clients about, how can we make this opportunity a little more attractive to the candidates that are available and that might be the right fit, while continuing to try to find areas where we can try to bring in talent from other skill sets and other markets. And we've had a handful of clients that we work with that are amazing at this, and they understand the talent gap, and they are more willing to be flexible to bring in people with new perspectives from other markets. And we find that we can be very successful with some of those customers. And some of the organizations that really are dead set on finding perfect, those jobs end up being open for a very long time sometimes.
What separates your company from your competition?
There's very few that have been in the market as long as we have, frankly. There's a couple of them, but it's a short list. There's been a lot of recruiting organizations coming in. In fact, some very big ones coming in from the UK and from some other areas that are ramping up with significantly larger numbers of recruiters than we have internally. So we're getting a lot more competition in the market. There's no doubt about it. What we tend to hear from organizations, in fact, Sarah, who's leading all of our engineering and technical searches these days, there's an organization that asked us to help find engineering of record and some experienced PE licensed electrical engineers. And then they'd worked with 3 or 4 companies with very little success. And we very quickly jumped in and started, maybe not finding perfect candidates, but relevant candidates, and having conversations with them about what we're seeing in the market and the feedback candidates are having. And they came to us and said, we've worked with 4 or 5 other firms. No one has brought the data and the insight and brought the level of service that you guys are bringing to us. We're not working with them anymore, and we're going to focus exclusively with you to fill this job. So I think we tend to separate ourselves by asking the right questions, understanding our clients' business, and they really realize very quickly that, these guys really know this market. They know what they're talking about. And once we can get in and really start working our process and working in tandem with our clients, they just notice an enormous difference.
John, you wear your passion on your sleeve. I mean, it's you care, first of all, not because of dollars and cents, but you truly have a passion for the marketplace and the industry. You truly care about the people you're talking to, whether it's candidates or it's hiring authorities. You're coming across that you're not finding people on the job boards and just flopping them in.
Yeah, I wish we could find people on job boards, right? No, that is certainly not the market that we exist in, right? Yeah, I know, and I appreciate that. We are very passionate about what we do here. It's not a transaction. And in some ways, I kind of fell into renewables because at the time, it was a very small market, and we had a couple of customers that asked us to go fill some really weird searches for solar people, like in 2007 and 2008, when solar module prices were $6 a watt and all this kind of stuff. It was just a really, really niche market. But I absolutely fell in love with it, and we've been blessed over time to attract and build a team of people here that are all really passionate about this industry.
That's a great lead into my next question. Sacramento's big marketplace, but we all have troubles attracting and finding good recruiters.
Yeah.
What's your secret?
I don't have a secret at all. I wish there was a secret. It's really, really hard. And I am not the kind of person that likes to just go hire 4 or 5 people, throw them on the phones and give them an email address and see what sticks. That doesn't work for us. It doesn't work. It's not a good service to our clients and the industry. It doesn't do anybody any good. So we're pretty methodical. And when we are interviewing and hiring, we We go through multiple steps, and we try not to run people through too much of a ringer, but we're trying to get an understanding of just they fit with us culturally. Do they have a passion for learning? There's a kind of a raw intelligence we're looking for. And we're not expecting anybody to come in here and be an expert in renewables, but they need to demonstrate that they have a passion for learning and really can have some technical understanding of this stuff. But it's not easy. It really isn't. And I wish that we had a little bit of an easier time finding folks. Not to mention that, hell, in California, cost of living is high. Hiring and adding recruiters to the team, it's not a small task. So we have to be very cognizant of who we're bringing on board here.
Is there any one skill that a candidate must possess?
You mean internally for our hiring needs here when we're adding to our team?
Exactly.
I think it's really three things that we're looking for. Number one, at the end of the day, recruiting, this is a sales job. And if being in sales or on the phone with people is intimidating or scary or a dirty word, it's just not the right spot, right? So first, it's just kind of that, even if they haven't had a lot of experience, at least the personality and engaging and somebody that, isn't afraid to be on the phone with somebody. So that's number one. Number two, again, we use the McQuaig survey, and we are looking for the personality profile to some degree, not because there's a pass-fail test on it. We just like to have an understanding of how somebody looks at the world. But the intelligence component is an absolute deal breaker for us. If somebody doesn't have kind of just a baseline and intelligence and then just seem to get it. And again, I'm not a rocket scientist, right? Like we're not looking for Mensa level people over here, but there is a line where it's like, okay, I think this person might be challenged and doesn't seem to really have that passion for learning to want to pick this up. Because there's a learning curve on the recruiting side. There's a learning curve on the renewable side, and it can be really daunting.
Boy, I can see that. So sales, intelligence, what was the third one?
I don't think I got to the third one. The third one is just what I would call generally cultural fit and coachability, which kind of go hand in hand. One of our core values here is learning and being accountable. And so if somebody doesn't feel like they're going to be receptive to coaching and to learning, they don't fit in here. And so that's the other piece. And it kind of all fits into what I would just call that cultural fit.
So what's a piece of advice that you could give? You've put them through your interview process. You've decided to hire them. What's the piece of advice you want to give a new recruiter in your dig that you want them to remember throughout their career?
I think there's two things. And the first one is what you mentioned earlier. You can't give up, right? You're going to have a bad phone call. You're going to have hires that fall apart. You're going to have situations where you said the wrong thing or you didn't understand something. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall down, and you have to be resilient. You have to be willing to get up and keep going, because failure is just a big part of this business in general and sales everywhere. But you got to be resilient and have that grit. So I think that's number one. But then it's also learning, being able to take that, dust off, figure out where you can adjust. What can I learn from the situation? Sometimes companies do things that we don't agree with. Sometimes candidates do things that we wish they wouldn't. We can't control everything that happens within a hiring process, but we can look back and say, maybe next time I can try to influence this a little bit earlier in the process by advising our clients to do this. Maybe next time I need to ask the candidates then when they get into the process about these three things. We can sometimes, things, you don't have all the information. I don't want to say that people mislead you, but they do, right? It's part of the game. Clients mislead us sometimes. Candidates mislead us sometimes. Everybody acts in their own best interest, and you can't fault people for that all of the time. But you can look at it and say, what could I do differently to try to avoid this, or to at least be aware that it might be happening? So just continue to be able to look back and learn and say, hey, how can I take some accountability of the process and try to influence things a little bit differently, as opposed to saying, oh my goodness, everything's so terrible. These people are so mean to me. We have to figure out, like, what can we do differently?
Yeah, boy, you couldn't have said it any better. My verbiage is more own the problem. Not that it's your fault, but own the problem.
Yeah.
And figure out what you will do differently, even though we may not have caused it. Sometimes we do.
Sometimes we go. Yeah.
Sometimes we put the pressure on to our time frame without listening to their time frame. Yeah. And I mean, whatever be the case, that was a great play.
I would add on to that. That's the other piece, is that it can never be about us, right? And I think that's the other thing that separates us from other recruiters in the market, is that frequently candidates feel pressured because it's about their other recruiter. Clients feel pressured that they're being asked to make decisions quickly, or, we've all heard the stories. And as long as, our success is a byproduct of finding win-win relationships for the individuals and the organizations we're working with, if we're keeping that in mind, everything else will work out.
Boy, I hope the producers clip that little statement right there, because that's so valuable. I mean, that's a profound statement. It really is. Jon, you work hard. Come in early, stay late. Welcome to ownership. What do you do to unwind?
Well, we're obviously not connected on Facebook. Otherwise, you'd be giving me a hard time about my travel schedule this year. I do find time to get away. And I have to. It's a lot of, like, you take a 3-4 day weekend, or, I'm traveling to a conference and I'll stay an extra couple of days and find some time to unwind here and there. So I do love traveling. I absolutely love traveling. I'm not doing a ton of it, but this year, actually, my travel schedule ended up being a little heavier than I anticipated. So I love to get away here and there. The nice thing about being in Sacramento, we've got some amazing trails and all kinds of things to do outdoor wise. Tahoe's an hour and a half up to go skiing. You can get to the Bay Area easily enough. We're close enough to do a lot of fun stuff outdoors.
Oh, that's wonderful. So I barraged you with a bunch of questions. Do you have a question for me?
So I know you're having conversations like this with leaders across the network. What's the general sense that you have, either from your own business or just others you're talking with, about the overall hiring market across the country, irrespective of kind of industry?
Relocations are a struggle. The one thing that COVID did is it squirreled a lot of the openness for candidates to go chase jobs. Yeah. It's gotten them comfortable. I want to work from home. Well, what if there isn't any opportunities there? Well, I'll deal with it. So I would have to say relocation has been the biggest challenge in the last 3 or 4 years for us. Yeah. What I'm hearing for other offices that I've talked to, it's primarily the availability of the top talent. You covered it a little bit. I don't want to generalize, but everybody is so focused, because the dollar is hard to get. Even though they're bigger dollars, the dollar is hard to get. And I find the challenge of having the conversation with the companies and their flexibility. You covered it in great detail, so I'm going to parrot a little bit about what you're saying, because you're on top of it. Getting them to understand what's really out there and available. Yeah. That's the biggest challenge. Now, if you can get a company to trust you, they listen better. So let me reverse this just a little bit. How do you teach your people to have a conversation with an employer to gain their trust?
There's no magic word or phrase you can say to build trust with people. You build trust over time by doing what you say you're going to do and delivering value at the end of the day. So there's very little we can do in the first 2 or 3 conversations with the new client to make them, quote unquote, trust us, right? I mean, we can ask great questions. We can appear credible. I think all of that helps. But really the trust comes in when you start having difficult conversations with candidates or with the client about, here's what we think are good about these individuals. Here's where we think the challenges are. We're concerned about these gaps here. That's where you start building trust, when they start realizing that, oh, Sarah's not looking out for closing this transaction. She's actually concerned about us finding the right person, and she's demonstrated that to us. That's how you build it. And it just takes time. So I think that how do we train people on that is just by doing it and by them being involved in those calls. And we try to have not the entire team on every single deal, because it's just not practical, but there's multiple of us involved in all of the projects we work on, and we just learn it, and we try to do it through osmosis and just by doing what we say we're going to do.
And that's the same thing that you guys do with your candidates too.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, and when we take a lot of time on the front end, and we frequently tell candidates, like, I don't think this is the right job for you. I don't think we should move forward with this anymore. Or why you just told me you had 2 other interviews lined up this week and you're expecting offers. Why do we even want to continue in this process? It sounds like you should just take that other job. And when you have those conversations with candidates, they just go, oh, wow, he's not looking to just fill this particular job. Go, hey, I know that company really, really well, Vince. They're a great firm. I know Bill, who's the VP of engineering over there. There's not a better guy you can learn from. Go take that job. Like, just take that job right now. And that's how you build trust with people.
And I love that little description you gave, because what happens is, and our people talk about it all the time, is when they fight back, well, no, now they're showing interest in the opportunity, and they're trusting you more to be able to open up about why they might be more interested in your opportunity.
Yeah, and certainly that happens sometimes too, right? It absolutely happens sometimes too, which is great.
That's awesome. Well, Jon, I want to thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure. God, I'm so glad we got to catch up again. It's been so long since I've seen you and had a chance to sit down and have a beer with you.
I can't remember when the last time I saw you was, but yeah, it's been great to catch up, and I really appreciate the time here, Vince.